Okay, so these are my initial ideas that I've taken from the primary sources. And what I'm doing now is, having selected my initial ideas, I'm then going to choose some of them to start to develop. So I've started to look at this one as an idea to develop and this one as an idea to develop. Okay, so the next stage then was to start playing around with some of that imagery, using some of the triangles from the first piece, the smaller piece that I did, looking at the internal and the positive and negative spaces. I then looked at some of the illustrations, carried some of those shapes and patterns into that particular piece. I went back and looked at this previous one here and starting to play around with that again and placing and layering over so the tree, so it became quite chaotic and busy. And then I started to move forward and combine the triangular shapes in the spaces, the negative spaces, alongside the spaces of the trees, okay, and it play around with the colour and the space. So that's where I sort of got to in terms of development. Then I started then to move forward with that, so these become further abstractions. So I'm starting to simplify the image again, playing around with the colour, because obviously it's an apple tree, so I'm using the green. The triangular shapes again, looking at the way that they've got diagonal lines going across and branches going across, cutting through, stopping, bringing and tying areas in together of the composition. Again, playing with a little bit more 3D shapes within that composition. So I'm looking at the triangular shapes becoming much more three-dimensional. So it kind of creates this kind of element of space so that you're looking into and there's things coming out at you, and looking at sort of tone and colour to push and pull some of those images back. And again, playing around with these kind of fluid lines so they become shapes now, not just lines. Okay. Playing again with colour, space, more white, concentrating on imagery this side, concentrating on imagery that side, bringing some of the greys, the dark tones into the picture now, so combining the greens and the blues and the reds. Again, playing around with where you place some of these three-dimensional shapes, okay, and how they apply. So that's where I got to. So I've got space and I've got these shapes as well. So I then came up with this as my potential final idea, okay. So yeah, so it looks like, it's almost like you're peeling away, but actually its origins and all these shapes still in these lines still correspond with the original drawing and the original initial idea and the original developments. Those lines haven't tended to disappear in the way that they move across, okay. What's changed now is that it isn't a solid branch anymore, it just becomes a line and a shape and a space, and then those kind of positive and negative spaces become patterns, three-dimensionalized. Okay, so you can see how that process then, it becomes abstracted over a period of time. So, this is where we've got to, this is where we need to develop our primary sources into an abstracted form.